It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company. You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Interesting thing happened last night just before the start of the Indiana-Purdue game. A couple of things that happened to me that were interesting. And I don't want this to sound like I'm poo-pooing Indiana basketball at all. That was a fabulous win and a much-needed win for Indiana last night, because I do think, and I think I've said from the beginning when I went down and watched them play against Alabama A&M to open their year and open the Darren DeVries era, that I think they had the chance to be a pretty decent basketball team. And I like the way that they spaced the floor. I like the fact that they had multiple guys that could hit from the outside. There were a lot of things I liked about it. But it does feel like and Kansas State, it's probably as much on Kansas State. That was a nice win when they got it, but they were still in search of that signature win. Not just a signature win for the Darren DeVries era, but also, and more specifically, a signature win for this season. For the quad one wins, they always change the terminology of this. At one time it was, simply need a good win. Then it was quality win. Now I think it's quad one. Is it not, Eddie? Are there four tier? Which is it? Quad?
Yeah, quad one, quad two, quad three, quad four.
How many quad four games have they played?
Well, you couldn't call it a quad, Jake, because quad has to have four, right?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. But how many? So if there are four tiers, there are four levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
How big an insult is it if you, if you're a coach, is that your thing? You're like, let's just guys, we're listed as a quad four. Does quad four go by how bad the team sucks, or just simply what league they play in?
It goes by their net rating.
So that would be my number one motivation if I'm a coach. Do you really think you're a quad four guy? Look, we're going to be quad three by January. Is that the goal? But either way, Indiana needed a quad one win. Indiana was in search of a signature win that they could say, not, hey, we're back. We've seen those T-shirts. But rather to say, this is, if we're on the bubble, and they still have basketball, they still have a lot of work to do, I think, to get off the bubble. But a good win for Indiana. And I like Darren DeVries. I don't know him personally, but everything I've heard and the way that they play, there are a lot of things that I like, and I think Indiana is going to be just fine in terms of that. However, one of the things I want to get into today, at no disrespect to Indiana, but Indiana fans and Purdue fans have obviously this angst amongst one another and a tension between them. I get it. It's what makes the rivalry great. But usually it is that Purdue fans tire of everything constantly being compared to Indiana and everything being about Indiana. And Purdue fans feel like every other Brady kid and Indiana is Marcia. Marcia. That's how Purdue fans typically feel. So today's a little role reversal, because with Indiana winning that game last night and Nick Dorn hitting threes and Connor Enright hitting a big three and Indiana getting some pretty good stops when they needed it, with all of that going on and with Indiana getting a really good win, a little bit of the discussion about it is going to focus on Purdue. Eddie Garrison, you tell me if you agree with this. And I don't have anything to pin it on. I don't. I wish I did. I'd be lying to you if I said I specifically knew. And I know that people might tune into this radio show to hear specifics and absolutes on things. But sometimes one of the things I've learned in my old age is that just as important as being absolute about something you know is about being honest if you are offering a perspective but not a fact, and saying this is just being around it for a long time, seeing teams, dynamics, working in different scenarios. My observation would be this. I think Purdue is fantastic. I think Braden Smith is, and I still maintain, the best player in college basketball. The most athletic? No. The most gifted? Maybe not. But the most effective in terms of what it is that he wants to do and making others around him operate? Yes. A wonderful player. Trey Kaufman-Wren on the low block hits shots that are contested that are tremendous, and I think he's a wonderful player. Fletcher Lawyer, when he's on, big caveat there, when he's on, is one of the best shooters in college basketball. But having said all that, and I think Matt Painter is as good as anybody you're going to find, something's off with Purdue. Something is not working with Purdue right now. I don't think it's terminal. I don't think it's long-term. But there's just something missing in their chemistry and the way they perform. And quite frankly, if I had to pick one thing that's the culprit. Now, Eddie, did you or did not notice last night that Purdue seemed a bit off?
I did notice it, yeah.
What would you pin it on? I have my thought, but I want to know what you think.
I don't know exactly what to pin it on because there were guys that looked scared to shoot the basketball. Like there were times where I would watch Jack Benter or Jakari Harris, Omar Meyer, CJ Cox. They would be open for shots and they were passing up wide open looks to keep the ball moving. And it was just like, hey, Braden, bail us out. Come on, it's all on you. Like that's what it looks like right now.
Okay. And this kind of goes into that. I think a big part of Purdue, the thing I love about Matt Painter, the thing I love about Purdue basketball, and the thing that Indiana fans should feel is a reason why they understand Purdue is because you grew up watching Bob Knight Indiana basketball. There you go again, Jake, comparing Indiana Purdue. I'm just giving you a baseline of the way things, why there's familiarity there. But Purdue as an offense, they are the classic example of the sum is better than the individual parts. And they have very good individual parts. But the thing about Purdue and Matt Painter's system that has been so special and so good for so long now is how well they work in unison with one another. And while Oscar Clough is fantastic and has been a great pickup for them, I do think at times it's made it difficult for Trey Kaufman-Wren to figure out his operating areas offensively because a lot of his space is being filled up. There's somebody already there. I don't mean space in terms of his glory or his shine, but literally the spots on the floor where he likes to be effective. There's somebody there posted up for an offensive rebound, and it's like, whoa, I got to back up a little bit here. But I also think that a big part of Purdue is they work as five Pistons that, when they are firing together, are as good and as well-oiled an engine as you can find. And Fletcher Lawyer right now is a Piston that's misfiring. If you've ever had a Piston that misfires in your engine, you're driving along and you just something starts rattling, and before you know it, like nothing is working well. And Fletcher Lawyer, who's a great player and a fabulous shooter, but he is in a bit of a slump. He was 3 of 10 last night. I think he was 2 of 9 from beyond the arc. But he's not a great defender. And so if he's not shooting the ball well, or if he's hesitant to shoot, or if they're not going down for him, then what he is there to do, he's not doing, and you're looking at it saying, okay, that's the Piston that's misfiring now. Because it's just kind of standing, waiting for the other Pistons to tell it when to start moving again. And it just feels like that is grinding to a halt Purdue offensively in what it is they want to do. And that comes off as there's some sort of inner turmoil or non-cohesiveness within the locker room. I don't think that's the case. I just think that so much of what they do is reliant on everybody executing what it is that their role is. And last night, you could see that was not happening. And Purdue drops their third straight. The other thing that they did not do well, and Indiana didn't necessarily take advantage of it in totality consistently throughout the game, but we said going in yesterday that Purdue's bugaboo, their Achilles, their area of susceptibility for Indiana is their inability to keep teams from routinely hitting from beyond the arc. In Indiana last night, they were not shy about putting up three-point shots, obviously. But more importantly, when it mattered most, they were able to knock them down. Lamar Wilkerson did not have a great game from beyond the arc. Nick Dorn did. They were able to find things that worked. It was a great game. It was a great atmosphere in Assembly Hall. And I thought Purdue did show good resolve each time that Indiana started to pull away a little bit. Purdue would have answers, but they were never able to get it, obviously, back in totality over that hump in the end. Before the game, I thought about this. Something that I've shared before, but I did think about it. Right before the Indiana-Purdue game tipped off, you had Nebraska and Michigan. Michigan, coached by Dusty May, native of the Hoosier State, and Michigan, who has a ton of talent. And Nebraska, under Fred Hoiberg, veteran team, older players, very poised, know their role, unblemished going into that game. Great game. And Michigan gets that win. And I was watching and I was thinking, and by no means was this an original thought, because I've seen it elsewhere. Jordan Cornette, friend of the show, who I saw at the IU-Indy Jags game about a month ago. Really good dude. Joel Cornette's brother. Jordan Cornette, who played at Notre Dame, had a great game last night against Virginia, did Notre Dame, even though Virginia won that game, but an exciting game. He said something, and I thought the exact same thing before he even said it. That Nebraska basketball right now is kind of what Indiana football did. They are a veteran group that knows their role, that because of their experience, they're able to weather storms. And that's why they were undefeated going into last night against Michigan. Yes, they dropped that game. But as I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Nebraska basketball is Indiana football. Nebraska basketball is Indiana football. And for years, that probably was also true. 1995, Nebraska basketball, I mean, I don't know what their record was back then, but they were probably Indiana football. They had a couple of good players, and they had wins that were nice here and there, but for the most part, not a team that you thought of as a basketball program. An anomaly when they had a tournament appearance. It dawned on me, though, last night that Nebraska basketball is Indiana football because of the ability to turn things around, get it going in the right direction, and the reliance on expertise, portal, etc., to build your roster. And that's when it also reinforced to me what I have said for years, the ultimate irony. Indiana basketball is Nebraska football. Brought in a head coach in 1973, in Indiana's case in basketball, 1972. Had that coach as a staple part in building a roster for years by getting all of the corn-fed, in the trenches, dirty work, X's and O's football players on the offensive and defensive line for Nebraska that wanted to play for Tom Osborne because he was there for 23 years, and everyone knew that Tom Osborne was the face of Nebraska football. Just as Indiana had players that played the game the right way and understood backdoor screens and help side defense and man-to-man and the motion offense because they grew up in Bob Knight's Indiana after he'd been hired in 1972 for the 29 years that he was there. And they complemented the roster with players from Chicago or Cincinnati, just as Nebraska complemented the roster by getting players from elsewhere, notably, California, whatever else, to play the specialty positions. But 3 national championships for both coaches over the course of time. And since those coaches have left, both programs have had blips on the radar with other coaches where you thought, they found it. Here we go. And then it kind of goes back to like the doldrums of being stuck in the mud, and they make another coaching change, constantly chasing the high of a long-standing period of the previous coach. And I have felt that way about Indiana basketball now for a number of years. Yes, Tom Crean lifted it up out of the doldrums. But then it seemed to kind of plateau, and Indiana was ready for a change. And Archie Miller was going to be the guy. Archie Miller was going to be that was the hire. And then it kind of like plateaued, and you know, you kind of resorted back to, okay, and you had coaches that had their moments. But I say all that because the latest installment of that is Darren DeVries. And we don't know whether or not, you know, is he Matt Rule? Is he, you know, Bill Callahan? I mean, they've had coaches that have gone through there that have had moments of, you know, excite you. But I do believe that when it comes down to it, Darren DeVries is a guy that I think is going to be able to build a nice foundation there. I don't know that anybody ever returns Indiana to what it once was. But last night was the first signature win for Darren DeVries in his tenure at Indiana. And it was a big win for them. And it was as much a big win for Indiana, and it was, and Indiana earned the victory because they made plays every time they needed to make a play. Every time Purdue started to make a mini run, every time you started to think to yourself, you know what, Purdue's one of the best teams in the country. They are a lock for a top 4 seed. I mean, obviously they were a number 1 seed lock a month ago. Something's going on. There's a piston misfiring for Purdue. But they've got enough talent and they've got enough experience that I think they weather that storm. But they're in a storm right now. There is rain in West Lafayette right now, no question about it. Freezing rain in this case. But for Indiana, good win, for sure. And now you have to hope that Darren DeVries, you build on that, and that is what launches you now towards trying to get yourself into position for the NCAA tournament this year. That will go a long way in that. The other thing that took place, the other story that was big last night before the game. And I'm admittedly confused by this. Now, Eddie, let me tell you where I'm confused, and we will allow your large noggin to sort this out for me. Okay?
You're confused about a lot of things, so I'm interested to see where this is going.
So I see the headline like everybody else does.
Are you talking about players with no college eligibility remaining declaring that they're going to the NFL draft as if they have anywhere else to go?
I have noticed that also.
I don't get it.
I do get it, and I'll tell you why. So we're going to sidebar from my confusing thing real quick. Let me address this. You know what? Table that.
Table which one?
The point that you just asked about, I'm going to answer that question for you in 12 minutes.
Okay.
Okay? Because it's going to be a little bit of a query rant.
Okay.
Okay? There's a little bit of a query rant. But I'm sitting there getting ready to watch the Indiana-Purdue game.
Yep.
And I was, at that point, almost gauging and trying to determine, literally, I was walking outside, licking my finger and holding it up in the air to feel the wind and how it feels. And then I got frostbite on my fingertip in 2 seconds, and I went back inside. And I thought, okay, I've got to find another way to gauge and temperate what I'm about to ask amongst people. And that is, and I asked mostly Indiana fans.
You can ask, you can just pick up any of the snow that's on the ground, toss it up, Jake.
Correct.
And figure out where the wind's blowing.
Except for all the snow is frozen to one another, and it's just large, huge chunks. But I was curious whether or not, because it felt to me like, for everything from the Indiana standpoint, like this was a game that the rivalry and the intensity and the anticipation and the expectation and the excitement and the drama and all of it felt like it kind of took a back seat this year, because Indiana fans have been distracted by everything else, and they have, they're a team that probably is going to be a bubble team at best. And so I'm asking people, hey, what's your level of 1 to 10 interest in this Indiana-Purdue game tonight? And I'm asking people that have season tickets for Indiana. And I got numbers as low as 2. They're like, I'll turn it on, and I hope they win. But like I'm good. I'm still soaking in what happened football-wise. Okay.
Fair.
So as I'm sitting there getting ready for that, I'm looking at my phone and I'm trying to look at the social media to gauge all this, and I start seeing all the stories coming out. Bill Belichick, not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bill Belichick finds out he will not get in the Hall of Fame this year. And when you work in our line of work, the number one thing that you try to do in every scenario, it's why when you watch coverage of a big news story, a must-see concert in Flagstaff, Arizona. Oh my gosh, Elvis Presley is still alive and he's performing in Flagstaff, Arizona. You have to find, and the local news will find a way to immediately localize the story. How can we associate this to Indianapolis? And so, of course, they leave the story with Elvis Presley, whose final concert was at Market Square Arena, will be playing in Flagstaff, Arizona. And then they interview people that live in Flagstaff that actually went to elementary school in the 5th grade in 1957 in Indianapolis. And what's the talk in Flagstaff? You always localize the story. So just as I'm seeing this Bill Belichick news, and I'm thinking, how do I localize this story? Other than the obvious, he is the Darth Vader of the most beloved franchise and era in Indianapolis. Okay? So as I'm thinking about that, then it comes out and I'm like, well, there's no more localization that needs to take place. Bill Polian is believed and alleged to have been the person that's behind making sure that Bill Belichick does not get into the Hall of Fame right away and does not get in on his first ballot. And so here's the question I have for you, Eddie, where I'm confused, where my confusion sits.
Okay.
And this goes back to your question about players and announcing they're declaring for the NFL draft when they have no eligibility left.
Yeah.
Everything now has to be a production. Everything now is a TV show.
Absolutely.
Who's going to get into the Hall of Fame? Be sure to watch the NFL Awards show, and they're going to intermittently show a little montage of the latest inductee so that you can sit there over 2 hours and piece together who the class is and et cetera.
Yep.
And it's always those that vote for the Hall of Fame. You can't say a word to anybody. It is top secret stuff. And there's different committees. There's the Veterans Committee, and there's the NFL Writers Association, and there's the Ticket Taker Association, and all these different people. So it used to be that when the voting was done, that even those that voted on the Hall of Fame couldn't say a single word about it. They couldn't utter or mutter a word about it until these big presentation shows that would announce the inductee class. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, how do we know that Bill Belichick is not getting in? Why has there been? Are they now releasing names of who didn't get in, and that's how we're going to determine it?
Yeah.
This goes and flies in defiance of every step of the process throughout. And then I got further confused because it seemed to me like this voting was done by some panel or group outside of the Writers Association that will be voting for the players, and this is like a veteran committee vote. Mm-hmm. Now, am I wrong in all of this?
As to who votes?
My understanding, and Mike Chappell, who's going to join us later, is a voter, so he can perhaps clarify this. But my understanding is that this particular, so in other words, is Bill Polian on the same voting panelist list as Mike Chappell?
I think so. Tony Dungy also a voter.
Well, they're both, which leads to this. And I could have looked this up, I assume, but it got very murky. I got very confused because every time I tried to look it up to find out, there was one thing, for example, that said the induction class, which will be announced at the NFL Awards show.
Yeah.
But also known during festivities of the Super Bowl week. And I'm like, well, which is it? Because it used to always be that you tuned in on this NFL Awards show and you found out who the players were, and you found out who the players were by seeing the videos of them getting the knock on the door from Shrek, right? Isn't that how this worked?
I forget his name. Yeah.
That's how it worked, right?
Yeah.
And like literally nothing was said until then. And now all of a sudden we're just leaking it out. Well, here's who is in, here's who's out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then you have your finalist list. And was Bill Belichick on that list of the finalists that came out that Reggie Wayne's on?
Yes.
Okay. So this looks good for Reggie Wayne then, right?
Well, it's different, Jake. You have 3 spots, I think, for non-players.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere here, right? You have contributor, you have I get it. I get all those things, right? But I'm just confused by all of that. But either way, was Bill Polian the one that kept Bill Belichick from getting in the first ballot? And my answer for that is, I don't know that we'll ever know that definitively. Matt Verderam talked with Bill Polian last night and had the story from SI that Bill Polian confirmed that, in fact, he had voted for Bill Belichick. No, I voted for him. I am not the one, even though everybody's saying it's me, it's not me. Then later, Adam Schefter comes out and says, Bill Polian said, I don't know whether I did or not. And it's entirely possible. I mean, Bill Polian is an older gentleman. I mean, this is no disrespect to him. I can completely see, depending on when that vote was, him saying, I'm a voter for the Auto Racing Hall of Fame.
Yep.
At the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Mm-hmm. And I keep each year a record. I photograph for myself because you take the ballot, it's literally a paper ballot, and you mail it in. I take a photo of it every year so that I can keep track, because if I vote for a driver or a contributor in 2023 and they don't get in and they're on the ballot again in 2024, well, they didn't not do something between 23 and 20. If I thought they were worthy in 23, I have to think they're worthy in 24 and keep them in. So I make sure that I'm consistent with that. But it is hard sometimes. If you were to ask me, did you vote 3 months ago for so-and-so, I would probably have to go back and look, to be honest with you. Because there are just so many, you're looking at so many different cases and things. The bottom line is this. To me, it's almost irrelevant because Bill Belichick, everyone knows he's a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Everyone knows he is the most accomplished coach in the history of professional football. And so, yeah, it's an honor to be a first ballot. I've always kind of thought of that honor as being exclusive to baseball, but being a first ballot, I guess, is a big deal. And in Bill Belichick's case, this probably actually helps him even more, because then when he does get in, the biggest storyline is going to be about the fact that he was snubbed because everyone knows he's a first ballot guy. Whereas if I said to you, Tom Landry, first ballot or not? Boy, I don't know. I know he's in, but I don't know what ballot he got in.
Right.
And in Belichick's case, literally everyone's going to be, yeah, that was the thing, because we all know he's a first ballot guy. He's going to be labeled as a first ballot guy more so than those that initially were anyway.
Like, I'm just curious, like, to the 10 people who didn't vote for him to get into the Hall of Fame, like, did they look at the 2, Spygate, Deflategate?
Yes.
And then did they look also at the 10 seasons when he did not have Tom Brady as his quarterback?
Fair.
He had 2 winning seasons. He went to the playoffs twice, won 1 game.
Fair.
Like, were those things the reasons why you held him out?
Like I said, most accomplished coach, right?
Yeah.
But yes, I do. But I do think that this is, again, normally the sanctimonious nature of it is typically reserved for baseball. But it does feel like that has crept its way here into football, and that there are voters that may have held against him. I think the Deflategate, Spygate scandals are culprit number 1. I think culprit number 2 is the reality is the way that you treat people comes back to help or haunt you. And in this case, Bill Belichick, who, as I understand it, is a really good dude's dude. I've always heard he's a good dude, good guy. But he also knew how to deviate attention from off of his players and whatever else. And therefore, when it came to press conferences and things like that, he was a complete pain in the backside. He wasn't overly cooperative. He wasn't gregarious. He wasn't loquacious. And so I think there are a lot of writers that are like, you know what? I'm not doing this guy any favors. When I was on deadline and I just needed a single quote and he wouldn't give it to me and it was a total pain, guess what? Turnabout's fair play. There's an element of human nature. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that it is justified, but there is an element of that. We'll get plenty into IU Purdue over the course of today. We'll get plenty into this Hall of Fame story as well. When we come back, Eddie asked the question, why are players that have nowhere to go next year in terms of their eligibility officially declaring the obvious? And this goes back to one of the things that's been a pet peeve of mine for a while. And I'm going to explain it to you in probably what's going to be a rant next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
By the way, this is one of those polarizing songs that people either absolutely love or they think it's the worst song ever. Where do you fall on that list?
I don't know. What's going on, Jake?
I'm a fan of this song. I'm more a fan of this song than apparently Giannis is of playing for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah. Grass isn't always greener on the other side, Jake.
Well, he doesn't know yet. He's only played there, right?
It's going back to what Miles said.
Oh, that's right.
About the departure from Indiana to Milwaukee.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with all of that. Milwaukee, this definitely imploded on them, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're in a real pickle here financially. Yeah. And no, I do not think, several people have already asked me, hey, could the Pacers send Matherin, Walker, and a first-round pick for Giannis? Giannis is going to require, probably 3 first-rounders and another all-star player. I mean, it's going to be a motherload to get Giannis.
And is there going to be a tax on Indiana to try to get him, too? There is no way Milwaukee fans would allow
Can you imagine that?
Ownership to trade him to Indiana with all the things that have happened in the last 2 years.
What if we find out that Miles Turner was the piece where Giannis was like, that's it, I'm out?
Well, do we fully know if Giannis was on board with the signing of Miles and getting rid of Dame Lillard? Like, that's still a question.
They were so secretive from the Indiana side. Who knows how open they were on the Milwaukee side about that transaction before it took place.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Everyone has heard my rant about youth sports. And if you haven't, I'll simply paraphrase it by saying this. Youth sports largely are a pyramid scheme. It's very obvious. Baseball, basketball, not all. But when you start getting into the travel tournaments and teams that are playing in a Jonesboro, Arkansas on the weekend of the 7th, and then on the 14th they go on and they're playing at a tournament in Atlanta, and then on the 28th they're in Vegas, and they're all 11 years old. It's not cheap. Those teams largely have AAU or some sort of specified coach, and I'm using air quotes, that are gravy training it from the get-go. They are convinced if I coach 10 of these 11-year-old kids, one of them someday will become a big-time player, and I'm really going to cash in, and Adidas will want to sponsor me and give me money and whatever else. But to get to that point, that coach needs high profile, get his team some attention. So they got to travel around and barnstorm around and play teams all over the country. And so they always have 2 to 3 kids on that team whose dads are bankrolling the whole thing. And yes, there are parents out there, and if you are one of them listening, my apologies to you. I hate to bring you the news. Like I said before, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, Pete. I'm not trying to be, negative Nelly here. Yep. I'm just simply being realistic, Rick. And you are getting told that, listen, your son just needs, or your daughter just needs to play one more travel season with this team, and it's really going to elevate, and then they're going to have to go to this camp, and they're going to get noticed by scouts and coaches and whatever else, and, oh, by the way, it's an extra $3,000. It's all a scheme. It's all a racket. Yeah, sure, there are great players. There are great players. And oftentimes those great players are being showcased and put on stages around the country at the cost of other parents who have completely bought into, and they're running over to the sporting goods store and they're spending all kinds of money on every auxiliary piece of equipment. And they got their 11-year-old boy wearing like pectoral protectors, and they haven't even developed pectoral muscles. On and on and on. But I digress. With that comes, whether we want to admit it or not, for a lot of players, with that comes, for those players, and in particular the players that are the coveted ones on the travel team, that those kids, even though they're only 9, 10, 11 years old, and it's getting younger. I've mentioned on this radio station 100 times, every single one of you knows somebody who has told you about or has a coach that is trying to entice your kid to play on the number 4 ranked second grade team in America. There is no number 1 rank. Everybody's always 4th ranked. And they got a top 5 9-year-old in the country. Ew. Okay, sure, whatever. But when you are doing that, and when you are creating this almost pyramid scheme of sport, what you are doing is, without even realizing it, you are planting the seed inside the young athlete of the thirst and the quench for attention, adulation, and stardom. And you're doing it, and they're starting to see it at 8, 9, 10 years old, because whether you think they can't hear you, they can see you. And they know that parents are talking about how this player is being held back by a bad coaching scheme, or a travel coach that doesn't run the right offense, or doesn't feature them enough, or doesn't run in football, doesn't throw the ball enough, and they're a great receiver, or runs the ball not enough, and they're a great running back, whatever it might be. And it starts at a young age, and like anything else, we are all conditioned, as adults in particular, we are all conditioned to fall back on the things that happen to us when we're young. Spend time around someone, and I mean this sincerely. What is the number one sign of cognitive decline amongst senior citizens? Not the number one, but a very common one. When you hear people, yeah, my grandfather, I'm not saying my grandfather here, I'm speaking generically. My grandfather, it's amazing. Like, you'll have a conversation with them and you'll have to repeat yourself 3 times, but then he can tell you exactly who he sat next to in second grade in 1949.
That's you.
Probably. Yeah. But it's because, but honestly, Eddie, when people get older and they start to lose their short-term memory, the one thing that you notice that's locked in is the stuff that's buried in the depth of their long-term memory and their subconscious. Because what happens to us and what we observe and what we learn and what we see, not only directly towards us, but just that impacts us, stays there. And that is the seed that gets watered and redirected over the course of your lifetime. And for a lot of young people, they see this at a young age. They overhear it. They see people talking about and trying to falsely raise them beyond what truly they are. And that lets them know, and it's important, of course, to encourage young people and to let them know that I get all that. But then it starts happening. What happens then when they become a Division I athlete? Of which a very small percentage of these people I'm talking about become Division I athletes. But what happens when they do become a Division I athlete? They get heavily recruited. They have recruiting services. They read all the websites. They see how many stars they have. They see all the social media posts from people saying it, and they get intoxicated by the attention. They get intoxicated by the love. They can't get enough of it. They cannot get enough of it. I understand it. I have my senior or my freshman college ID. I look like the biggest train wreck on the planet. You can tell when you look at my college ID and you look at the picture, you're like, that's a guy right there that's about to spend a freshman year like the Hindenburg, because he thinks the world revolves around him. And I did. I thought the world revolved around me because I was 18 years old. I was an 18-year-old boy, right? Young man, whatever you want to call me. But imagine not only having the natural, arrogance and naivete of being 18 years old, but also having that being fueled by 9 years worth of people building you up, most of which are doing it for their own intended gain. But you're getting recruited by all these coaches, and so you send a thing out saying, like, show the love, State U. I'm coming on your campus on Tuesday. And now all of a sudden everybody's sending you things. You got to come here. Got to come here. Young man, what a decision you're going to make. It'll be the best thing that ever happened to you. We need you here. And then they announce that that's where they're going. And the love just starts showering and pouring in like you're in the middle of a monsoon. And everybody's talking about how great you are and you're a program changer, and they're doing cartwheels, and you got podcast guys are smoking cigars talking about how awesome it is that even though they're 42 years old, for whatever reason, their day now has been made because of the decision of a 17-year-old, and they're intoxicated by it, as I would have been too. I'm not damning them for it. I would have been too. I would have loved that kind of attention. And then they make the announcement, and guess what? Everybody's on to the next one. Well, that's great that we got Garrison, but what's Finch going to do? We got now everybody's got to find out what Finch is going to do. And eventually Garrison goes, oh, wait a minute, what happened to all the love? I was getting 150 likes a day. I was getting 5,000 comments a day, and that's all gone away. So guess what? Now it's time to open up my commitment. I want to thank the coaches at State U, but I've decided to go ahead and reopen my commitment. Please respect my thoughts in this process. Okay. Now, everybody at State U is out with pitchforks, but man, everybody at Tech U and the other schools, they're all over you now. They're back. They are courting you big time. Oh my gosh, did you hear? Sally got ditched at the prom, and I've always had the hots for Sally, so I'm going after it big time. They're all over it now, right? Rinse and repeat the cycle. Transfer portal. Now I'm going to go into the transfer portal, and everybody's going to, and I'm going to do the cap dance again, and I'm going to go on the All-American Game broadcast and announce where I'm going, and everybody's showing me the love, and I got people making signs and T-shirts and slogans about getting me there. And they're intoxicated by it, Eddie. They are obsessed with it, and it's a culture we created. It's a culture that we could sit here and damn it all we want, But we as a people in this country built this up to these athletes that have completely delusional thought as to their rank and their importance. And that's why then when the music stops and the musical chairs in the game of attention comes to an end and they're circling around that one last folding chair that still has an opportunity for them to get a little bit of spotlight. Even though they've now played their 6 years at State U, Tech U, and 3 other schools mixed in between, and they got to do a cap dance every time, and they got to feel the love, their eligibility now is expired. And where do you go from here? I don't know that anybody has these big celebrations to announce which agency it is that you're going to sell insurance next year. I don't know that anybody has some big recruiting thing to find out which PR firm it is that you're going to go work for, or which law firm, or whatever it might be, which grad school you get into as a normal student that's now no longer carrying a ball and getting all kinds of praise and pomp and circumstance. So what's your one last gasp that you can do? There's nowhere else for you to turn in terms of your career until you post that you've decided that you're going to go into the NFL draft and submit your name. Please respect my decision. Your decision? It's like me on September the 2nd sending out a post saying, I've decided tomorrow that I'm going to enter my 54th year. Yeah, that's just naturally what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to make sure that everybody's wishing me a happy birthday one last time. Or once again, because I missed it for a year. And so what you are seeing, Eddie, is a group of people and a group of young people that have become accustomed to believing it's the norm to have things championed about them that actually are just part of the natural process of life. But every other process and step they've taken has been showered upon them like they're the first to do it. So, therefore, when it comes time to where those kinds of decisions come down to the last, they don't know how to pivot away from it. It's that simple, right? Eddie pointed out something last night that Matt Painter might have erred in, and I think he's right, and we'll get into that next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yesterday, we were talking about Indiana-Purdue going into the game, and one of the strengths for Purdue that we discussed. And again, I don't know what it is, but there is clearly something going on internally with the Purdue basketball team. I don't know whether it's, those guys have been around each other a lot. So you don't think that it would be that all of a sudden they decided they don't like each other. One of the things that is going to be a challenge moving forward in college athletics is the NIL. You know what? Especially if you're a young person and everything that I just talked about in terms of the adulation and attention that you've become accustomed to, what happens when you are a guy that is a good player, brings your lunch pail every day, plays hard, wins a couple of games for your team, and then you realize that another guy on your roster who's in a slump or is not playing well is getting 3 times the money that you are. That has to take a toll at some point. It has to compromise cohesiveness. But with all of that said, Purdue's strength that we talked about yesterday going into the game, Indiana's advantage was Purdue's inability to rotate over and collapse on shooters and leave people open for 3. And Purdue's advantage was getting the ball inside and taking advantage on the low post. And there was a stretch where Purdue at the beginning of the game went, I think, 4 minutes without a score, but they got away from going inside. And they were relying on, Fletcher Lawyer, maybe they were trying to get Fletcher Lawyer going, I don't know. But either way, they deviated from what it is that they should have been doing throughout the course of the game. And in addition to that, I thought when they were reliant in the inside on Jacobson, I thought they really dropped off. Because Indiana is not a low block-oriented team in any way, shape, or form. But they were able to get to the basket, and they were able to control the glass more so when Clough and Kaufman-Renn both came out. And, Eddie, you noticed that too, right?
Yeah, there was I think it was 14 minutes left in the second half, and they had just cut it to 6, Purdue, 47-41. And then they pull out Trey Kaufman-Renn, so your only big on the floor is Daniel Jacobson, and you've got Braden Smith and 4 bench guys out there. I'm like, what are you doing? You're making a run, and now you're just going to disrupt the flow of the offense by taking out Trey Kaufman-Renn, because that 2-man game between Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith, IU just simply couldn't stop it in that second half. And next thing you know, IU's back up by double figures because of the substitution that Matt Painter made. It just shocked me that he would make a move like that to not have Oscar Clough or Trey Kaufman-Renn on the floor, because Oscar Clough is not Trey Kaufman-Renn, but you can still get him on the block, and he can still score like he did a couple times last night. And I just didn't think Purdue took advantage of it as much as they should have.
By the way, what's your favorite Mellencamp song?
I don't know.
We still have
Jack
tickets.
and Diane.
We have tickets to give away, right?
Yeah, 1 pair. Yeah.
Jack and Diane, but that's like the
very basic, I know.
Yeah. For me, it's Check It Out. I've always liked Check It Out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Authority Song's a good song, too.
Yeah.
I saw yesterday he posted a video of him. He was on a treadmill smoking a cigarette, right? Said he's getting ready for the tour. He just can't. You can't play the electric guitar in the freezing cold. It does something to the guitar itself. I think we can safely say that. And if you are Indiana or Purdue, if you're Purdue, you can't go into Assembly Hall with your number one advantage and then, to your point, Eddie, make a substitution that takes away and negates that advantage right away. That you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's that part there. We can look back on and just what's going on, like you said from Four Non-Blondes earlier. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
Did you say Rab John's in the mix?
Yes.
Jeff Rabjohns get the IU side of things. We'll get further into what this means last night and what corners might have been turned for Indiana basketball. We'll do it with Jeff Rabjohns, Peegs.com next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Little bust a move. Little young MC, right? Go to a party, right? By the way, Eddie, this is becoming more and more visible within my life, and I'm still not used to it. Are you starting to see and or get text messages, whatever else, from the 463 area code?
Yes.
I automatically assume it's like that Seinfeld episode where Elaine got a new phone number and was no longer in the 212. If I get a 463 number, I just assume it's spam, right? I feel bad for the 463 folk.
I almost assume any text I get from a number I don't have is spam.
Correct.
Nowadays.
So that's fair. That's fair. I got one guy that texts me all the time that alternates every other letter between capital letters and small letters.
What?
Yeah. I just automatically think that means he's psycho.
I know a couple people that are like the lowercase on the first word of the sentence. Like you do it sometimes. I'm like, and then there's text where you send it's capital. I'm like, Jake, what are you doing here? Can we make up our mind?
I was an English major, and I consider myself to be very grammatically sound, just so you know. So please point out, next time I do that, you need to let me know. Did you get a hold of Jeff?
Yes.
Jeff Rabjohns joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. JavaHouse.com, the website, Jake25 for 25% off. You can also enter in FAN for the bundle. That includes the amazingly smooth Colombian coffee, the Wrangler energy drink, the liquid science hydration beverage. Literally, you just take the little pod, you put it in water, and there's your beverage. But Jeff Rabjohns, Peaks.com. Last night, Indiana, their first signature win of the Darren DeVries, that's kind of redundant, Darren DeVries era. And Jeff, let's begin with this. Always appreciate your time. I thought last night, it wasn't a knock on Indiana per se, just based on the kind of the way their schedules worked, I guess. But they needed a signature win and a quad one win, if you will, and they got it last night over Purdue. When you look at that game first and foremost, did they do anything differently going into that game than what you have seen in the other opportunities, we'll say, Michigan or Michigan State, whatever it might be, to get one of those quad one wins?
I don't know about different. I would say better. They've been shooting the ball incredibly well all season. They're built to make threes. They did that. They shot 40% from three in the first half on 8 makes, which is just really, really good against the Matt Painter coached defense. They averaged 1.4 points per possession in the first half, and Purdue was allowing less than a point per possession. So Indiana's offense was really good, but I thought the things they did better, really boxing out, keeping Purdue from getting on the offensive glass. Purdue is really good as a rebounding team, as a rebounding program. They've got, obviously tremendous size there. And, Indiana did a good job from keeping that, the size differential, et cetera, from being a big factor. You look at two things that really sort of tell you the story usually on those things: second chance points, and then offensive rebounds. And on second chance points, Purdue won, but it was just 11-10. So Indiana lost that battle by only 1 point. You only lose that battle to Purdue by 1 point. You did your job. And then you look at offensive rebounds: Purdue 9, Indiana 6. You'll live with that differential against Purdue with their size every day of the week. So I thought that those were the things that Indiana did better. And then there were sequences where guys went and got rebounds. Tucker DeVries going to getting 10 boards was big. Lamar Wilkerson going to getting 7 rebounds from the guard position I thought was big. And Reed Bailey had some blockouts where he didn't get the rebound, but there was one time he took, Jacobson, the 7'3" guy, and just stuck his hips into him and just drove him, out of the rebounding area. And he did that. Reed Bailey did that a couple of times. So I just think Indiana was better at just bringing some force to rebounding situations. That to me was the one thing they did better. But I don't think they were necessarily different. I just think they were better in key areas that matter against Purdue.
When I look back at the beginning of the year to now, Jeff Rabjohns, my guest from Peaks.com, of course. Jeff, when I look back at Reed Bailey, at the beginning of the year, I thought that they used him and he was much more active on the low block than what we have seen of late. Now, is that a concerted schematic thing, or is that a matchup thing, or is there no legitimacy to my observation?
Wait, say that part again?
I felt like at the beginning of the year, Reed Bailey was a player that they were much more actively involved with in getting him involved down in the low block. And that now, I mean, he in other words, from an offensive standpoint, and that now they've gotten away from that and his design is elsewhere as opposed to being somebody that they're using as a, like, say, a secondary offensive option. Maybe I'm off base with that, but have they gone away from a little bit using offensively Reed Bailey as a focal point?
Yeah, I think they have. They still want to use him, high post extended up top of the key as a facilitator because, I would contend passing is his best skill. He was a point forward for the previous years of his college career, so that's really his best skill. But they're not really asking him to score a ton right now. He did a good job on a couple slip screens. He is really good at that, and they like that component to his game. But last night he goes in there and gets 9 points. You get 9 points from Reed, you do a good job. I think the biggest storyline for IU over the last couple games is the emergence of Nick Dorn. Last night he gets 18 points. He's IU's second leading scorer behind Lamar Wilkerson, who got 19. Nick Dorn goes 6 for 11 from the field overall, 4 for 9 from three. You have a guy who's essentially your third offensive weapon behind Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries. You have a guy like that who can go get you 18 points, go 4 for 9 from three against a team like Purdue, ranked number 12 in the country. That's the potential development and emergence of a third scorer. And he did it out when they went out to Rutgers. He made 6 threes out there. So his last 2 games, he's made 10 threes in a Big Ten road game and then a home game against the number 12 team in the country. So Nick Dorn's emergence, his development, and I think coaching staff has done a really good job of working with Nick Dorn as far as here's what your primary skills are. Here's what you need to look for. And Nick, he missed the entire summer, a lot of the fall, coming back from that foot deal injury that he had. So when he came back and first played, it was kind of like, okay, you're cleared to play, but you haven't played a lot. And he hadn't played much at all, really, with this team. So it took a little while just for him to get full conditioning back, which is normal, and then really to sort of understand, his teammates and just to get some rhythm, just to get some, in IndyCar terms, seat time, and just really get used to it. But I think Nick Dorn's emergence and the staff's development of Nick Dorn is kind of one of the emerging stories for Indiana here in late January.
Look at Jeff going with the IndyCar terms. I like it. Now, so I'm going to stick with that theme here. You ready, Rabbi? So right. Tucker DeVries.
I can't hang with you on IndyCar. I'm an amateur. I love it, but there's no chance I can hang with you.
Well, I mean, I'm a moron, but I'm just around it enough that you pick up a little bit. But over the course of the Indianapolis 500-mile race, if you talk to a driver, they will say, yeah, it's funny, if you make 7 pit stops, then the time between stops is called a stint, right? Every driver has that area where they go, yeah, I had a stint where the car just wasn't handling well, and I just had to fight through it until things started to feel smooth again. It feels to me like Tucker DeVries has gone through a stint where the handling just wasn't there and things were a little bit off. And I thought last night that paid dividends because he started making contributions in ways other than simply being a pick and pop scorer. And I thought he was really big in terms of a couple of the proverbial non-box score type moments. What has been different for Tucker DeVries, let's say, in the last month versus what he has had to be over the course of his career as a score-first guy?
I think he's I think he's been better on the boards. I think that's something that you look at, and he's had multiple games here recently of double-figure rebounds. That's big for Indiana because they're not going to go get rebounds with overwhelming size. They got to do it with boxing out. They got to do it with technique. They got to do it with just some aggression, and I think that's something that's big for Tucker. He had 10 of Indiana's 22 rebounds last night. 10 of their 22 defensive rebounds. So obviously, possessions aren't closed out until you get the defensive rebounds. So that's a big number. You get 10 to 22, and I think he's still a good passer. He has 3 assists last night. So 9 points, 3 for 7 from three. He's still a threat to go off from three at any point in time. He's one of those players, one of the new phrases is creates a lot of gravity, which means what? The defense pays a lot of attention to him and defenders go toward him. They know you want to try to be there on the catch, even a step or two behind the line. So he is the guy who draws a lot of gravity from the defense, and that opens some things up. There were some open threes that Nick Dorn got in IU's big win at Rutgers that you kind of rewind, hit pause, hit slow-mo, and you can see two defenders stepping toward Tucker DeVries, and then all of a sudden the ball swings and you get pass, and what happens? Nick Dorn's open in the corner opposite. So I think Tucker really understands how much sometimes just his presence on the court, his movement, he can draw defenders, and just by drawing defenders, he can create space for other guys. So I think that's something that's helpful. And again, his passing, he's essentially a power forward. You get 3, 4, 5 assists from a power forward. You're getting some pretty solid production in areas beyond scoring.
Jeff, what the football team did, Jeff Rabjohn's my guest, Peaks.com. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. What the football team did, which was, there are not enough superlatives we could say over a 3-hour show about what Curt Cignetti has done. It's well documented. But were we entering into an area where the basketball program was about to potentially fall victim from an interest standpoint for Indiana athletics? And I know that's crazy to say. And I know that this is a university and an athletic department that has with NIL collectives, and they've figured this out in the distribution and all of it probably faster and better than most athletic programs have. But it seems to me, as somebody who went to Indiana and grew up on the north side of Indianapolis, that a lot of the friends that I have that are diehard Indiana sports fans, their energy, their time, their money, their attention span was so focused on football the last couple of months that it was coming at the cost of their investment to basketball. Tell me I'm wrong.
I think that probably was true while IU was going on a historical, magical football run. And I think when you do something as incredible as the IU football team did, it certainly is worthy of everyone's full-time attention. This is the first time in the history of American college sports that a program that had the most losses all time in that sport became national champion of that sport. It was absolutely deserving of everybody's attention. There was a panel of sports analysts who voted it I can't remember exactly what they called it, but like the greatest underdog achievement or something like that in the history of sports globally, ahead of some things that happened in European soccer, which is something that I'm not an expert in, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. But that's the level at which IU football's achievement was being discussed nationally. So I think, yes, up until January 19th, 20th, a lot of people were totally focused on IU football. Here's what's really interesting, though. Okay, football team, champions, done, celebrated, had the deal in Memorial Stadium. Everybody got to see the trophy. What's the next thing that happens, Jake? IU plays Purdue. Assembly Hall was packed, and it was rocking, and it was loud. And, Trevor Andershock and I got there 2 hours and 15 minutes before tip, just because of the weather. You want to make sure everything's good. And the students are there in Wilkinson lining up. And I'm like, okay, this looks good for IU. And then 40 minutes before tip, the entire lower bowl plus part of the balcony of the student section is full. And then all of a sudden, gets to be tip. The place is full. I'm down to the court shooting some video of the football team getting introduced. And you look up and I turned around man, balcony behind me full. Look up, balcony across me full. And when Indiana went on that 15-2 run, that place was loud, Jake. It was loud. It was louder than, I would say, at least 2-3 years. Maybe a couple early Trace Jackson Davis games it got that loud. But it was loud. And so it's okay, Hoosier Nation's still there. That they just decided, hey, they wanted to focus on the football team's historical run. But, okay, that's done. And they're right back there at basketball. Assembly Hall was Assembly Hall of old. last night when IU knocked off Purdue.
When you mentioned, because I was curious, the camera angles I couldn't tell on television about the balconies. And I know the balcony seats, Jeff, it's well documented. They're not the best seats in the house, but I do kind of like it, right? And you're saying, so last night they were all filled, correct?
It was packed. It was packed, and it was loud. It wasn't just, okay, their butts in seats. Okay, fine, cool. No, it was that people were into it. They were rocking. Like I said, when IU went on that 15-2 run, it was loud. And a couple, some of those big threes, man, that place was roaring. Everybody's up, everybody's cheering, everybody's yelling. It was Assembly Hall of old last night. And I even had some friends who have been longtime season ticket holders, 40-plus years, who texted me things like, haven't heard that in a while. That was the hall being the hall, things like that. And it was rocking. So, yeah.
When was the last time you felt it that way? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying specific game, but like, when's the last time that you sat there and you looked up and you thought to yourself, this feels like blank? It was when?
Man, probably got to go back to at least probably Trace's junior year, Trace Jackson Davis's junior year. So probably 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Where it really felt like that. There were some big crowds, but it didn't have this much just raucous energy, and people were just jacked. They were from the get-go. Nick Thorne hits that shot to start the game, and then Tucker DeVries come down, bang, a three. And from the get-go, people were like, yeah, and they were loud, and they were aggressive, and it was Assembly Hall being Assembly Hall.
With Jeff Rabjohn's my guest, we're talking about Indiana-Purdue last night. That energy, that from the crowd standpoint, and kind of that turn of the page. I felt like last night was officially the turn of the page from football to basketball, because to your point, like, football had this amazing run, and then you honor them before the game. It was almost like that was Indiana's way of saying, like, hey, guys, one last chance. Give it one last round of applause, please, for the football team. And then, boom, now our feet, here's what we're turning our attention to. How much was that needed, do you think, for Darren DeVries? And I don't mean that he was in any way, shape, or form, like, questioning anything, but just for him to finally get that taste of Assembly Hall's rocking, you're getting an ovation, your guys are being re-embraced or embraced by this program. How symbolic was all of it?
Well, I think it was important. And I even told some of the coaches who I know, I'm like, this is the first time you guys really felt Assembly Hall. Trust me. When you beat Lindenwood or K-State or whatever, there's a good crowd up at the United Center when they beat Marquette and scored 100 and all that. That was nice. It's good. It's far better. An average Indiana crowd at Assembly Hall is better than probably 90% of college basketball. I think that's one thing that people sometimes forget to keep in mind. But I thought it was important. I thought it was important for the players really to feel it. I thought it was important for the coaching staff to really, understand this is what this place is like. This is what this fan base is like. And it was an important win for the season. Indiana's metrics, going into the game, I think they were like 35th in the net, which matters on Selection Sunday. They were like 26th in Bart Torvik, which is on the team sheets this year for the selection committee. So their metrics were solid, but they needed a big win. They needed something that like really, really jumps out on the resume. And you knock off number 12 team in the country. It's a quad one win. It's a big win. So from the resume standpoint, it was good. From the just for the sake of the fan base, just to give them something to grab onto and say, yeah, this is our team. This is what we wanted to see. It was big. But I think for the players and coaches, especially some of the folks who are new, it was big. I mean, obviously, Drew Adams, assistant coach, he's from Bloomington. He's been there before. He's felt it. Kenny Johnson was at IU before with Victor Oladipo and that crew. He's felt it. But for a lot of the coaches, and certainly for the players who are new, they never really felt it before. And they felt it last night, no question. I think it was big for them to understand. Not understand. It's one thing to understand something. It's another thing to feel it.
Correct. That's right.
Last night they felt it. It was not just, we understand the history, we see the banners. It was, holy crap. And even when Connor Enright got done talking post game, like you could even see it on his face. There was a little bit like, wow, this place is for real. I mean, you could just see it on his face.
Okay, last thing, Jeff. Let's say you and I are going to go, or you and buddy, whoever it may be. You're going to pick 3 Big Ten environments, and I'm taking Mackey and I'm taking Assembly Hall out of it, okay? Including, I don't know if you've been, how many to the new Big Ten stops you've been to. I'll just say college basketball in general, okay? You've got to go to a game and do the whole weekend, meaning you're going to go there, you're going to go to the place that has like the best, bar or restaurant or just entertainment scene that is a true college town. It's got a college, it's got its own Kirkwood. It's got its own area that's fun. You're going to go into the legendary establishment where it's got its own specialized pizza or whatever it might be. Then you're going to go to the game and you want to soak in the atmosphere, and the crowd's going to be raucous, and there's going to be a good environment and history and everything else. Give me the 3 places Jeff Rabjohns has been in his travels in college basketball that most meet the criteria of those 3 spots.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Okay, you said take Assembly Hall and take Mackey off the table?
Correct. So Indiana, Purdue are off the board.
Okay. You got to put Cameron Indoor Stadium in there.
Okay.
It's just, especially like, we get good seats. I mean, let's be honest, we're really fortunate as media folks. And to sit on the court, you sit on the court at Duke, those students are like, when they lean over and they're doing all that stuff with their hands, they're like, it's like you can reach up and be like, dude, move your hand. I mean,
right. Okay.
They're not being jerks, but like it is. I know a lot of people around here don't like Duke. Okay, that's cool, but I'm just telling you, when you're there, it's cool. That's certainly got to be on the list for me. Let's see. I'm trying to think. The pit at New Mexico is cool.
Okay, I've been there. Yeah, that's cool. I'm with that. Now, here's the thing: does New Mexico though? Is there is there a true campus feel, like college bars, scene, restaurants, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's why I was hesitating. Like, I don't remember what.
But it is a cool venue.
I'm gonna throw you 2 low key ones that I would put on there. Wisconsin's pretty cool. There's all kinds of bars around there. Now that's a city, not a town. Obviously, it's Madison, it's state capital. But you can walk from the Kohl Center to a bunch of bars. It's got a Wisconsin vibe to it. They embrace their Wisconsin. We eat the food we eat, we drink the beer we drink, we have a good time. They're sort of like, there's no pretense up there. So that's kind of a cool place. Hilton Coliseum at Iowa State is pretty cool.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Especially when they're good and they play somebody good. It's not Assembly Hall, it's not Mackey, but it's pretty cool. I would put that up there. And one that's off the beaten path, and people are going to think I'm crazy, but Nebraska's not bad. When they're good, and those people are into
it's a cool town, man. I'll tell you what, Lincoln's a cool. There's a cool vibe for sure right around the athletic complex at Lincoln.
And it's different. That's a little more like Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's downtown. It's not really campus vibe, but it's downtown vibe. But it's a little like Gainbridge. You can walk around, you can pregame with your buddies or whatever. Then and everybody walks over the game, and afterwards everybody's back out at the bars or grabbing a bite to eat or whatever. Nebraska's it's cooler than you would think, which is kind of surprising because people would probably go think Nebraska basketball. Who cares? Well, when they're good and that place is full, it's actually not bad.
Eddie, that makes you Nebraska, right? You're cooler than people think. Is that right?
Well, that's the first time you've ever complimented me. Thank you, Jake.
Backhanded, albeit. Jeff, we appreciate the time as always, man. Continue. We basically turned the page later than years most, but we've turned the page now back into basketball mode for Indiana. So look forward to your coverage at Peaks.com and talking to you throughout.
Absolutely, man. You guys take care. Thanks, Jake.
Jeff Rabjohns joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Allen Fieldhouse at Kansas is up there. I hate to admit it, but it's true.
Breslin Center?
Breslin Center's got to be up there. Of the schools in the Big Ten, including even the new ones, that's one of the, believe it or not, I've never been on the Michigan State campus. Have you been up there?
Indeed, yeah.
Is it cool?
UIndy, back when I was in college, the women's team was going to Lake Superior State, which is the tip top of Michigan. And on the way up, we stopped at the Breslin Center and they practiced there. So that was pretty cool.
I mean, and how long is the Breslin? Gosh, the Breslin Center is probably 30 years old now, right?
Probably, yeah.
I still think of it as, it's been around for, 15 years. No, it's been around a while.
It's very similar to Mackey with how it's designed,
I can see that. Probably not a bad seat in the house, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all like an oval, or not an oval, but like a sphere. And so, like, the noise is just coming straight down onto the court.
You know who else is a lot like Mackey? And this is, I'm not saying in any way their basketball program, but the arena itself, Wyoming is exactly like Mackey. Literally, it looks like, I wonder if it was designed by the same group. Because you walk in, if you didn't know any different, you would think you're in Mackey Arena. Identical to Mackey Arena. Do you like Illinois? Have you been to Illinois?
I've not been to the fake Assembly Hall.
That's right.
Was Rupp Arena mentioned? I don't think.
Rupp is an interesting one. Rupp is interesting to me because, like, you always hear Kentucky fans get on their holier-than-thou rant about how they don't storm the court at Kentucky. They don't court storm at Kentucky. They're better than that. They're above that.
Was it surprising to you how you didn't court storm last night?
No, because, I mean, Indiana has court stormed before, I realize, but beating Purdue in a Big Ten game, even though that was a massive win, number one, you kind of don't want to give Purdue that satisfaction, right?
Right. It's not like they were, number one or number two either.
Number two, they also, they play every year, right? Yeah. So it just doesn't have the same feel of like beating a Kentucky at home. But Rupp Arena, though, everybody always says, here, actually, they don't even do the Ulysses S. Bentley voice or Ulysses Bentley, the fourth voice. It's more of a, I'm going to do the Thurston Howell, the third, but in Kentucky, it'd be junior, right? Down here, man, we just a little bit more classy.
What?
Okay.
Why are we huck tuning over there, Jake? Come on now.
They're dipping.
Oh, okay.
Although they probably swallow the dip spit in Kentucky. But Rupp Arena, I went to a game there a couple of years ago. Tom Spalding, a really good dude, got tired of me bashing on Kentucky, so he calls me and he goes, we're going to go to a game. So we went and saw Kentucky play Auburn, and it was it was great. The people were cool. I mean, it was great. And I hate Kentucky, right? But the Rupp Arena is like attached to a mall, and it's downtown, but it's kind of cavernous. So there's no intimacy to it at all because you're pretty far from the floor, and the floor itself has a pretty open space. So the court rush at Rupp Arena, it's as much about their holier than thou as it is the fact that it's just not logistically possible to do. And it just kind of feels like you're going into a downtown, going to a game, and then going home. There's not like the intimacy of a college. Allen Fieldhouse is on a campus. Hinkle Fieldhouse is on the campus. Assembly Hall's on the outskirts of, but on the campus. And Rupp is just kind of in downtown Lexington. Last night, I did watch a college basketball game. I watched, I'm saying, after Indiana-Purdue. Late, I watched a game, and I saw something that ties to Indiana that's been done before, but it still was an anomaly and something I think Indiana should be proud of in college basketball. I'll explain next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripe. Surfside, which is oh so smooth. I'm talking about iced tea and vodka, lemonade and vodka, or iced tea and lemonade and vodka in the same can. Variety of flavors, new ones always coming out. And Surfside with just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, and no carbonation is oh so smooth to enjoy. Absolutely love it, and it is so easy to sit and relax watching a game, movie, whatever it might be, Surfside is perfect for all scenarios. Look for it wherever you find your favorite adult beverages. Please be 21 and please drink responsibly.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Sunshine is out. Sunshine in Bloomington for certain. Indiana, the win last night over Purdue. From the Boilers side of things, something they got to figure out. I don't know whether it's, like I said, lawyer getting involved, whether it's figuring out how Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough, just how you're going to work that down-low combo and still be able to rotate out and guard on the perimeter, a number of things for Purdue. Eddie, I would like, before we get to my college basketball observation not having to do with Indiana-Purdue, I'd like for you to look out the window and let me know how we stand here on the Great Meltdown, because
That's a good question.
for those that were not listening to the program on Monday, we had a very abbreviated show Monday because of the Pacers game, Pacers and Atlanta. And Pacers in action tonight, taking on the Bulls at Gainbridge Fieldhouse this evening, 7 o'clock on this radio station. But when they plowed the parking lot here, that creates those little snow, basically we've got the Rockies, if you will. Yeah, snow mountains. And so I asked Eddie, what will the date be when there is no trace of any snow out there and or ice and everything is melted? I said February 16th. Eddie, you said
the 17th.
Okay, 17th. And
I went under.
And you're saying it now. How confident are you in, as you look out, where do we stand here?
I'd say a little bit has been melted for sure. It'll help in the incoming days, like next week especially. Have you looked at the forecast for next week?
No. Listen, I hope I'm wrong, because I hope that you're going to tell me it's going to be 70 degrees.
So starting on Sunday, you've got 23, Monday 27, 28 Tuesday, 31 on Wednesday, 30 on Thursday, 38 and sunny on Friday. And there's supposed to be some sunshine for most of those days.
Okay. Now, is there any snow forecasted?
Not anymore.
Now, I'd like to know this. JMV is off today, right?
Yeah, your best friend is hosting.
Derek Schultz is in for him.
He's in here already?
He's already here. What in the world? Does he know? Did you tell him 3 o'clock?
I don't have to tell him anything. I'm not affiliated with that show.
I mean,
that's Todd Meyer.
Yeah. So
is he infiltrating your studio?
Derek's just skulking around. He's just hanging. Like he's. It's like some sort of a bad vision. I looked out the window and he's just staring in.
Like a leech?
Yes. Well, been that way with me for 14 years. So last night the game's over. I watch it. It was big win for Indiana. I'm flipping the channels. It's late. I'm not tired yet. I'm like, okay, what's on?
The Australian Open?
I do like the Australian Open. I have not. I do love high-level tennis. I've not followed much of the Australian Open.
Americans were doing pretty well, and then
Coco Gauff broke a racket, right?
Yeah, she did not have a great performance, to say the least.
I catch a college basketball game between Grand Canyon and Nevada in Reno.
Really?
Mountain West action. Going into the game, Nevada 14-7, Grand Canyon 13-7. Now, this was significant because I believe, even though it's happened before, matter of fact, it happened years ago when New Mexico played Valparaiso. But I looked it up. I thought, I wonder if this is the repeat of a lone feat. And Mark Monteith would be the only person I could think of off the top of my head that would know. Chris May would probably know the answer to this. But my research, which basically indicates scrolling through the folds of my brain, okay, going off memory.
Now, how long did that take?
I don't know if you know this or not, but the more folds you have in your brain, the more intelligent you are.
How many folds do you have?
Oh, if you look at the fold lines in my brain, it literally looks like a 1971 Beijing phone book. Tons. I mean, all kinds of just stacks and layers and layers and layers.
Let me
right?
look that up. 1971 Beijing phone book.
I mean, lots of folds in there, lots of wrinkles, lots of crinkles. But I was watching it, and it was a fabulous game. Nevada was down 5 with like 40 seconds to go. They had the ball with a half a second left, and it was a 3-point game. Got fouled shooting a 3, and the kid hit all 3 free throws with a half a second left, winning overtime, to which Nevada won. Derek has walked in real quick. Derek Schultz. Early version of the crossover here, brought to you by Love Heating and Air.
He's got to move your stuff after.
So just so you know, first off, let me just say this. I had my bag and my jacket sitting in the chair next to me.
Yeah.
We are under very specific instruction corporately, and I'm not kidding you, to not elevate those where they are visible on the camera. So thank you for.
Oh, sorry. Where is the camera?
Nice job.
Oh, it's right there?
Yeah,
then I should slide over.
No, you're fine where you were. It's a rotating camera.
Oh, it'll
why are you here? You're not on until 3. Why are you?
I do something called show prep. I know that's something that is foreign to you, but I do something called show prep. So I also have to take some work calls because I'm still on the clock until 3 o'clock, and they need me at my day job as well.
Okay. All right. Last night, Derek, I will give you the trivia question. I'm putting you on the spot.
Ooh.
As I was flipping the channels after the Indiana-Purdue game, which I'm sure you will talk plenty about today, I saw the Nevada Grand Canyon game. And I watched the end of it. It was a great game. Nevada won. Why is this guy in Sports Talk Radio in Indianapolis talking about this? I will answer that question by saying this. I had to look it up. It is not the first time that this has happened because it happened when New Mexico played Valparaiso years ago. So it's a repeat feat. However, a repeat feat of something that has not been done elsewhere. What took place last night as it relates to Indiana basketball that has never been done before in this installment, which we were seeing a repeat of, between Nevada and Grand Canyon?
Two Indiana high school basketball players as head coaches?
More specifically.
2 Indiana All-Stars?
More specifically.
2 All-Stars that were NBA draft picks from Indiana?
You're hitting everything but.
I don't know. What else?
It is the first time that 2 Indiana Mr. Basketballs have played each other.
Okay.
Not the first time because they've coached each other. But
that makes sense.
That is the only combo of Indiana Mr. Basketballs to have faced each other in a Division I college basketball game.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And Nevada and Steve Alford. Thank you, Eddie. Steve Alford won last night. And then I looked up Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Now, you're now in the college, the business of knowing colleges. Grand Canyon is just an online school, right? It's an online university with a basketball arena.
I think it was, and then it didn't become an actual brick and mortar university.
You want to know the enrollment of Grand Canyon University?
3,500 kids.
Eddie, would you like to know the enrollment of or guess the enrollment of Grand Canyon University?
Idea.
7,000.
Strangely enough, one of the kids that goes to Grand Canyon eats hot dogs out of a flashlight every day, as brought to him by the Brady kids. Grand Canyon University. What was your guess on the enrollment, Eddie?
7,000.
Half that for me.
3,500, you say? 79,000 students.
Oh, my God.
Their arch rival, I think, is University of Phoenix.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Dan Marley was their first coach, right? When they became a Division I program?
Well, if you go to Phoenix, you've been to Phoenix before.
Yeah.
If you go to Phoenix, the Phoenix airport has ads all over the place for Grand Canyon University.
They got money to spend, apparently. Yeah.
Well, they got 79,000 people paying $40,000 a year.
I guess so. Wow. Good for them.
They won. What's lined up on your big show that you're preparing for now?
Yeah, so obviously we'll talk about IU and Purdue and what it meant for both teams, because I think it was sort of maybe a turning point for both Purdue and Indiana. And we'll do so. Galen Clavio, who is going to come on the show. We'll focus more on probably closing the book on IU football, because Galen was a big part of that, and he was one of the only true IU football fans that I knew in my life for so many years. He's going to join us. Kevin Bowen's going to come on as he does weekly at 4:00. And then,
by the way, was he on the morning show this morning? Because he went to South Bend last night, right?
I thought he was on the morning show. Yeah.
Yeah. Him and Rake do that little moonshine run up there every year. And they lost in overtime, didn't they?
Correct.
Yeah.
So double overtime. So what time did they get back?
That's even with the bypass now through Kokomo, that's still, where he is to Midtown, it's 2.5 hours.
Nobody says Midtown.
And that's where Kevin is too,
Midtown,
I think,
South
right
Bend?
over there. No, I don't think there is a Midtown South Bend. My parents are from there.
So 2.5, they would have gotten back at 1 a.m., right?
And then Patrick Talty, Indiana Sports Corps, is going to join us at 5 o'clock. We'll talk about trying to recruit the NFL draft here.
You agree with my theory on that, right? About the Speedway?
About
you don't want to give me credit, but I'm right.
They don't want to do it at the Speedway because they're afraid that their fake numbers
correct
will be found out to be complete falsehoods. Is that what you're saying? That's your conspiracy theory?
Yes.
I do think that it's ridiculous to think that 800,000 people were in Detroit, Michigan over a weekend.
Yes.
I think that is. I think the people that say that have no clue how many people is
Correct.
800,000 people.
That's all I've ever said, right? I mean, they get, what would you guess when they show the aerials of the NFL draft day one? What would you guess the crowd is?
150K.
See, I think that's even really high.
Yeah.
I think it's 80,
Yeah,
which
okay.
is still a very impressive number. So why lie about it?
I mean, I'm just thinking the aerial, so the entire space. But you're right, 150 is a lot for the entire space.
I mean, a sold out Lucas Oil Stadium is what, 65?
yeah.
So you're saying double? I mean, you take double that amount of people and spill them out into downtown. It's
a lot. I thought the Green Bay numbers were much more realistic. I think they said it was 300,000 over the course of 3 days. But even for little tiny Green Bay. But it gives me faith, Jake. I mean, it's Pittsburgh this year, which is basically the Midwest. I know Pittsburgh's kind of weird. But
I mean, eventually everybody's going to
Green
get
Bay,
it.
Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago. You've had all these Midwestern cities already hosted. I mean, to me, it's a fait accompli that it comes to Indy.
Okay. I mean, hard to argue that. Did you say Chapp's in, by the way, Eddie?
215.
Okay, 215 for Mike Chappell, and there's a reason we're going to have him on. And one guy that relates, again, Bill Pulliam was one. There's another player that relates somewhat to the history of the Colts, speaking out or shedding light on the situation yesterday with Bill Belichick. We'll get into that next.
is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Eddie, do you have a rooting interest in the Super Bowl?
Not really. I do not know.
Give me the 5 teams in the National Football League that you have no opinion on. Like, literally, you're just like, yeah, I don't like them or dislike. They're just there.
Okay. I'll start with the Denver Broncos. That's one.
Okay.
I think you have to go with the Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
Quite frankly, you could almost loop in the entire NFC South.
I mean, there's
into this
a lot of truth to
conversation.
that, probably, right?
Yeah. Washington,
Okay.
Miami,
Okay.
both New York teams.
Okay.
I know that's more than 5, but
By the way, the Baltimore Ravens have a new head coach, right?
yeah, they hired Jesse Minter like last week.
I'm sorry, not Baltimore. I'm sorry. My apologies there.
Jesse Minter, by the way, grew up in
Cleveland has a
Indiana.
new head coach, and they went to Baltimore to get him.
Yes,
right?
Todd Monken,
Yes, sorry.
former offensive
OC.
coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, and he was with the Georgia Bulldogs before that as well.
So Cleveland, that leaves 2 on the board, Las Vegas and Arizona, right?
You would have to assume, considering that they haven't made their announcements, Jake, that there's some sort of tie with Seattle, potentially. Maybe Gary Kubiak for one of those jobs.
I could see Kubiak being somebody that would be of interest, especially in, well, Arizona may be the case too, if you're starting over at quarterback, right?
Yeah.
The reason I bring it up, I think my rooting interest of the Super Bowl is the Seahawks. I've just always kind of liked them. I don't really know why. I've just always kind of liked them. But there is an element of just blandness about the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
And the reason for that blandness, I got nothing against Mike Vrabel. I got nothing against Drake May. Robert Kraft, probably a little different story. I did not realize when this story came out that Bill Belichick will not be inducted into the Hall of Fame in his first go-round.
Yeah.
Then it became this sidebar story and this curiosity from a lot of people of, well, what does that mean in terms of who didn't vote for him? Who is responsible for him not getting in? And I go back to, I always thought first ballot Hall of Famer was an honor that really only mattered in baseball. Not to say it's not an honor in any sport, but it was a rare air, the upper quartile of the upper quartile. That's rare air. It was the rare air if you were a first ballot baseball Hall of Famer. And in basketball and in football, it doesn't seem to have that same level of clout. But apparently it does, because it was, and yes, I guess there is simply the surprise factor of how could Belichick not, I mean, what more could he have done? He's won more Super Bowls than any coach in history. He had his team prepared in so many different ways. His defenses and the schemes he came up with. But I also believe there are 3 things in play.
By the way, I meant to say Clint Kubiak, not Gary.
Oh, where's Gary Kubiak?
I don't think he's coaching anymore because of health reasons.
Okay. But a quarterback whisperer. That's why when you said that, I'm like, okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But either way, on to Belichick, the thing about him, a brilliant coach and the most accomplished and decorated coach in the history of the National Football League. But number one, the way that you treat people helps or haunts you in the long run. And many of the writers probably, I mean, he was intentionally difficult. My understanding is he's like a super fun dude behind closed doors, but he was intentionally difficult. And so I could see, is it petty? Is it unprofessional? Perhaps. But there's an element of human nature of people that may say, oh, okay, well, you made it difficult on me when I was trying to cover games and just do my job. I'm going to make it difficult on you to get in. Then you also have the cheating scandals. Spygate, Deflategate, all of those things. There are those that are going to consider that the same way that they take into consideration the steroids with Canseco and McGuire and Bonds and everybody else. And we've seen with that, you always are going to have those people that say, like, for example,
Yep.
I'm not going to say who or what, but I'm a voter for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Motorsports Hall of Fame. And there is one driver who is very accomplished that I will never vote for because there is something that took place that I feel defies being into the Hall of Fame. And there may be those that believe that for Belichick. That's petty. I think mine's a little more sound. I'm not talking about personal stuff. I'm talking about within the sport itself. And there are those that may feel that the cheating scandals compromise the validity of his accomplishments. And then the last thing being, and you mentioned it earlier, Eddie, his record without Tom Brady, and perhaps the thing that actually, there's one other thing hanging out there that I've not heard people mention that took place that might most have hurt him. I'll tell you what that is. We'll get back into Indiana, Purdue, and Chap joins us in 15. Mike Chappell joining us about 15 minutes from now. Shed a little light on Hall of Fame voting and just how it works. We'll talk Super Bowl as well, and that with Matt Verderam, SI. Bill Polian's become an epicenter on this story with Bill Belichick only because the initial word was that Polian was the catalyst that basically was going around to people saying, hey, we know that Belichick will get into the Hall of Fame, but let's make sure it's not the first ballot because of all of the Spygate, Deflategate, and cheating scandals. And initial word was that Polian was the one leading that charge. Polian did an interview last night with Matt Verderam where he said that's totally untrue. I absolutely voted for him. Then later, when asked about it by ESPN, Polian said, I truthfully can't remember. And I understand that people are going to see that and say, like, what in the world? Look, two things that come into play here. Number one, I mean, Polian is an older man, although by all account, when we've had him on the show, and he's been great when we've had him on, but it's probably been a year since then, very sound. And I can tell you, as somebody that is a Hall of Fame voter and something, it does get hard to remember because the votes are done. Like, it wasn't like they voted a week ago. I mean, it's been a while. And so I could see how it's like, you know what, I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. I could see how he would give that kind of an answer. But the other thing that I think factors in, number one, I did not realize that Robert Kraft and Belichick have a very icy relationship right now. And that there was the thought amongst a lot of people, I think, of I'll go with one versus the other, but not both. And Kraft, I think, even with his own indiscretions, Kraft probably is more liked within the football circles. He was a big part of the end of the potential work stoppage back a couple of years ago, et cetera. I think one of the most underappreciated or talked about aspects of, if you will, like a dent in the armor of the Belichick regime is Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl in Tampa. Because during the time that those two worked so well together and won so many games together, you always heard the discussion of which is it? Is it the system the coach put in place, or is it the quarterback? And two things have happened since that I think have been a factor here. The first being Brady going to Tampa and winning. And Tampa wasn't terrible, but I don't know that anybody really thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. And by him going down there, that's when you're like, good Lord, maybe it is the quarterback. For me, it's been in the last year as a broadcaster. I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I don't dislike him, but I'm not a fan either. I've always been kind of neutral on him. And I covered a ton of games that he played in and went into press conferences he was in and et cetera. But some of the things that he has pointed out now, and this is not to say that other quarterbacks that are analysts can't point these things out, but I don't hear them do so. Little things like that game that they were just doing, he did the Denver and New England AFC Championship game, correct? Am I wrong in that?
Tom Brady?
Yes.
Yes.
What game? Somebody help me out. What game was I watching that he was doing recently, and they were talking about the wind?
I can't remember.
The bad weather.
Oh, it was Philly and San Francisco.
Okay, that's it. You're right. That's exactly what it was. And they were talking about the weather and the wind. And he did a demonstration where he took the football and he's like, see, here's the thing. When you're throwing into like a tailwind, you have to account for that in your velocity of the football. And so therefore you throw it more at this angle than this angle. And he's showing the direction of where the nose of the football needs to be upon release point and et cetera. And while other quarterbacks, Tony Romo or Ryan Fitzpatrick or Kurt Warner or whatever it may be, while other quarterbacks that are analysts can opine in those areas, the nuance of something so finite for Tom Brady to not just know of and know that he had to do as a quarterback, but also as a broadcaster to know that that's exactly what it is that people want to hear about. That sort of attention to detail, I'm like, man, that is literally in your own stratosphere level of understanding and et cetera. And like I said, maybe every quarterback knows that kind of stuff, but they don't share it if they do. And I think a little bit of that, all Brady still being so, even maybe more so in the public conscience in terms of his football brilliance, probably comes at the price of Belichick's brilliance as well.
I have to give Tom Brady, the broadcaster, a lot of credit too, because year number one was not good. Like
totally agree.
He wasn't entertaining. He wasn't that insightful. It was very, passe and basic stuff that he was spewing out. And like this year, it has been a totally different dude.
Completely agree.
He's been much more entertaining, and I think he is now the best analyst that is on any of the networks.
I would agree. Now, the other side of the coin would be Tony Romo, who, when Tony Romo was first doing it, it was like, oh my gosh, this guy, this is unbelievable. And now Romo sounded, the last game that he did, and I think actually he might have been the one that was on the AFC title game, but Romo sounded like they took caffeine away from him. I was like, is he sedated?
I know he said he was sick. I know he said he was sick 2 weeks ago.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. When he first was doing it, Romo, he would break down. I mean, literally every play, he was calling out plays before they were executing them, right? And then I wondered if in the pre-production stuff, if teams didn't start becoming closer to the vest of letting him know what they were anticipating doing because he was just calling it all out. But Romo is like eggnog. When you first take that first sip, you're like, this is great. But when you get to the point you've had enough of it, you're like, okay, I'm enough. It just, at that point, you're just kind of, bleh, Last night, Indiana-Purdue. Big win for Indiana. They needed a signature win. Indiana needed a quad one win, and they got it last night in what was an electric atmosphere at Assembly Hall. Kudos to the fans that made it down and braved the elements and the road conditions and getting home late and etc. Indiana it was not as if Indiana came out and looked like this unbeatable juggernaut. They played very, very well. I'm not taking anything away from Indiana at all. And I really like Darren DeVries, and I think he's going to be a solid coach for them. He has a roster that he basically had to put together at the 11th hour, and it looks to me like they are indeed figuring some things out. I thought they were a little too reliant. We talked about it with Tucker DeVries early in the year of where it looked like he just had green light, and now they're using him. I thought Jeff Rabjohn said it earlier, an excellent term when he said he's a gravity guy because when the ball goes to him, it pulls everybody down towards that, and that frees up elsewhere. And, they were able to, Dorn was able to hit some shots when they were able to then reverse over quickly and because they pulled away from there. But the one thing from a gravity standpoint where Indiana really took advantage was they knew going into it that Purdue has struggled in guarding the three. And part of that is because when you are so reliant on your low post pieces and you've got Kaufman-Wren and Clough down there, and Fletcher Lawyer is not a great defender. So you're not getting a lot of help. You're not getting a lot of guys coming, rushing out to defend the outside shot. And Indiana took advantage of that. I'm not saying that Indiana last night was, that there was not a 2002 Kent State Regional Finals, Jared Odell and Tom Coverdale just hit another three in Dane Fife performance and Kyle Hornsby, but they were able to hit big shots when they needed to and get open threes when they needed them. And I thought Purdue went away. Trey Kaufman-Wren was very good, but they didn't go enough to establishing the low block, especially in the first half that allowed them to get down. And Eddie, there just looks to be something going on with the Purdue basketball team.
I would agree. And also, Jake, you have to remember 18 days ago, this IU team was hosting Nebraska at Assembly Hall, and they were up 16 in the second half. So, like, the blueprint was there. Like, we've seen them in moments look like they can compete with some of the best teams in college basketball. The problem is they just hadn't put together a full 40 minutes. Now, last night wasn't 40. It was like 37 because the last 2 to 3 minutes of that game, they were getting on the edge of like, oh, are they going to hold on to this? And they miss a couple front ends of 1-and-1s and leaving the door wide open for Purdue. And then probably the least expected guy to hit a 3 to kind of seal the game for them there at the end ends up doing it in Connor Enright. But on the Purdue side, Jake, we were talking about this earlier during one of the breaks. Like, you look at that Purdue team from last year and you look at that team and look at the team from this year, there's not much of a difference.
Right.
Like, they struggle to make shots on a night-to-night basis. If Fletcher Lawyer's not hitting, they don't really have anyone else they can go to.
And listen, I really like Fletcher Lawyer. And when he's got his feel, and I do believe in March he's going to have his feel. I do. But when he's got his feel, he's as good as anybody. However, last night he was 3 of 10 from three-point range. 3 of 10 from the floor, and I think 2 of 9 from three-point range. If Fletcher Lawyer is not hitting outside shots with regularity, then you become hard-pressed to find areas where he is making solid contribution for you because he is a liability defensively. And because he's a liability defensively, when you have those two pillars on the low block, you're just not getting enough guys that can come out and guard in the perimeter.
Yeah.
And, while it is wonderful that Purdue has brought everyone back, I worry about this for Matt Painter and Purdue. I do. I worry about what I'm about to say. I think you made a very good, and I think it was off-air, comparison earlier, Eddie, when we were talking about Clemson football. Because when the portal and NIL became a thing, Dabo Swinney was like, I'm not going there. I'm not going to, that's just not what I'm about. And I understand and appreciate that conviction, but at the same time, the reality is that is today's college athletics. And I'm not saying Purdue doesn't do NIL and doesn't do portal. I mean, for crying out loud, Oscar Clough's been a huge part of what they do. And they have other pieces that over the years they've gotten good play from that have accentuated their roster. But while it's great to bring guys back and not get totally swept up in getting players that are going to be portal guys and entering the portal and testing the water and that sort of thing, the reality is it is a part of today. And in addition to that, when you have guys that are sticking around, one would assume it's because you are facilitating for them some NIL deal of some sort. And eventually that gets out of what this player's making. This is true everywhere. I'm not just saying to Purdue. But that team last night for Purdue, somebody else mentioned it to me, and I thought it was a very good point. You can't rule out the possibility of a chemistry issue that's taking place because of money. I mean, money is in the workplace. You always have in the workplace people that are like, wait a minute, you find out what somebody's making, and you're like, how are they making more than I am? I do this, I do that, whatever. Marriages. Money's always a huge aspect of when people have marital issues. I mean, money can be the ultimate divider. It can. I have no idea, and it would be irresponsible of me to sit here and say that's the problem with Purdue. I have no idea if that's the case. All I know is that there is definitely the appearance that there are some chemistry issues within the Purdue basketball locker room. And last night, I just did not think when they needed it with regularity that they looked in sync with one another. And that could be that Fletcher Lawyer is the piston that's simply misfiring right now, and that's dragging down the engine. That's also a possibility. But joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he, of course, a regular guest on the program from CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59, Mike Chappell joining us. And, Chap, you are a Hall of Fame football voter, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I needed, and I know this will shock you to know that I get very easily confused by things, okay?
Okay.
But let's go, hear me out here on a couple of areas of clarification.
Sure.
I knew going into, and I don't remember when these things get released, I think it was a couple of months ago, where I saw, for example, that Reggie Wayne and Adam Vinatieri are both finalists for this year's Hall of Fame, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that the same, is that the same finalist list that included Bill Belichick?
No. The way it works is there are, and we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, whatever. There are 15 modern era finalists, Reggie and Vinatieri and Eli Manning and Drew Brees and blah, blah. And then there were 5 in a different group of seniors, coaches, contributors, and that was Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, Kenny Anderson, L.C. Greenwood, and Roger Craig.
Okay.
So those are voted on separately.
Okay. And how many ultimately get in?
A minimum of 3 modern era, a maximum of 5, and I'm pleading ignorance on the seniors.
Okay.
I think a maximum of 3 get in. We vote for 3.
So my question is this. Bill Belichick's inclusion in this year's Hall of Fame has no factor on Reggie Wayne's possibility.
Correct, and that's what people need to understand. I saw where Belichick has come out and said he didn't make it. It can't be like, well, how do you put in Reggie Wayne over Bill Belichick? That's not the case. How do you put in Drew Brees? That's not the case.
So basically, okay. So in other words, the Hall of Fame. To get into the Hall of Fame, there are 2 lanes in which there is a traffic jam. And Bill Belichick was in one lane, and Reggie Wayne is in a totally different lane. And who gets waved through from the lane that Bill Belichick is in has no factor in how the traffic moves in the lane that Reggie Wayne is currently in, correct?
Exactly. And I hope people realize that they're 2 different. They're voted on 2 different.
Okay.
One does not impact the other.
Okay. So the group in which Reggie Wayne is a part, along with Adam Vinatieri, that voting has taken place, or simply the meeting has taken place where everybody's case has been heard?
No, the voting is done. We have voted.
And so let me ask you this. When the voting is done, are you privy as a voter to knowing the voting totals?
No. We used to for the most part. Now they've changed it. The selection for modern era, it starts at 15. We cut it to 10. We cut it to 7 finalists, and then we vote on 5 of the 7 guys.
And you are or are not allowed to say who those 7 are?
Probably not. I know, but I don't know, so I'm not going to risk getting fired.
Understood.
So,
okay. So.
And then on the other ones, the 5 seniors contributors, the 5 of them are discussed, and then we vote on 3. So we vote on 3 of the 5, and
so it is the same group of voters then.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
And
now
different committees advance the seniors and coaches. We have subcommittees that do that, but then the 50 selectors, we 50 selectors select the modern era and the coach contributor senior.
So if we know that Bill Belichick was not one of the 5 eligible senior contributor category, if Belichick was not one of the inductees from that group, how does he already know that, and yet the players that are in the 15 finalist category are not yet privy to knowing whether they made it or not?
Well, that's a false assumption. Everybody in the process knows. I don't. I mean, I'm talking the modern era guys, the ones that got in, the ones that didn't get in. They have been informed.
Okay.
Everybody who was up for induction knows whether they got in or not.
Okay, so Reggie Wayne knows whether or not he's in.
Yes.
And they are just basically sworn to secrecy. Is that right?
Well, they, as much as they can, they ask you to not share. They want people not to know. And I don't know how the Bill Belichick thing came out, whether he was asked, I don't know. But yeah, they want this to be as much of a surprise come next Thursday, a week from Thursday, as possible, and they do a pretty good job of it. But there's no, well, if you spill the beans, you didn't get in, you won't be on the ballot next year. There's none of that, so it's please don't tell anyone type of thing.
Okay. Were you instructed or was it ever requested to you by anyone of reason why you should not vote for Bill Belichick?
There were pluses, minuses, many more pluses than minuses, but no one ever said, hey, man, don't vote for this jack off. No, none of that. It was just you debate. There's good debate. There's bad debate. There's emotions, but there were never any instructions by anybody among the other selectors.
So to your knowledge, there was never any sort of a campaign to keep him out, to penalize him?
No. And anyone that says that, I was in the room. Yes, Spygate came up because he cheated. I mean, we can candy coat all you want. He was disciplined by the league, $500,000, and they were docked a first-round draft pick. So that's on his bio. So certainly was discussed. Now, it just depends on how much you want to weigh that into keeping him out or making him wait a year. It's no different than we've had players who have been suspended for games for steroids, PEDs, whatever. And that could impact their nomination, their candidacy, because it's part of. There's no morality clause. The Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame, it's all based on the field, and I would argue that Spygate impacts on the field. I would argue that a 4-game suspensions for PEDs or whatever, it's on field related. So, but if there's an off the field thing, whatever, that's not to be. Or one thing, and please, people who say that Bill Belichick was kept out because he was a bad guy to deal with in the media. That's so much BS. It really is. I voted for people that I didn't care for. I voted for people that blew me off on interviews. That's got nothing to do with it. And if it does, yes, you should no longer be a selector.
Did you vote for Belichick?
I can't. I'm not going to tell you. I know you got to ask. I'm not going to say. I'll leave it at that. I'm going to keep it quiet. I may come out and say later, but right now I'm not going to say.
Is there Mike Chappell is my guest. He is with CBS 4 and WXAN Fox 59. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Chap, in baseball, I think we know clearly. Clearly in baseball, we know that the integrity of the game, whether it be gambling or whether it be PEDs, have been deemed by the writers or the voters of the Hall of Fame in baseball as the cardinal sin that cannot be overlooked. Is there any list or even understood cardinal sin from the football side?
Not that I know of, again, because it's all on field. Because baseball does take that into account. I don't know how it's listed in their bylaws, but football, it's all about on the field. And then that's a little bit of vagueness because, again, if you're suspended, well, that's not on the field. Well, it sort of is because you're not on the field. So, but no, that's the difference in it. And you would enjoy sitting in the room for 8 hours and listen to the back and forth on some guys. I've always taken the approach, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, that if you're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, you really need to check virtually every box. And Belichick does check most boxes. But I was PO'd last year that Vinatieri didn't get in first ballot. I mean, he checks every box. When I did his presentation this year, I led off by, people say that you can't write the history of the NFL without this guy, Joe Namath, whomever. And I said, Vinatieri's one of those guys. And then he didn't get in, so I was PO'd about that. We'll see if that changes this year. But it's it's still some vagueness on guys on how you evaluate a career. Was it long enough? Did he do enough in a short time? Tony Baselli, Terrell Davis, did they do enough in a short time? There's no boxes to check other than, in my mind, first ballot guys. We've had some guys first ballot that I didn't agree with, and I didn't support until it came down to a yes or no vote. Then I voted yes, just because you want these guys to not linger. But now it's 50 people trying to decide in their own mind if this guy or that guy checks enough boxes and to get in. And Reggie's had to wait. This is his 7th year. I think he's waited too long. I've said from the start that when we allowed Andre Johnson to get in over Reggie and Torrey Holt, that we were wrong. I just believe that. Calvin Johnson jumped the line. Well, that's Calvin Johnson. I think there's a good chance Larry Fitzgerald gets in this year. He's second all time. His numbers are just staggering. And
you once again had the responsibility of, for those that don't know, when you guys, each player that comes up, there is a writer that covered them the majority of their career that then states the case for them, right? And then the others vote on it, right?
Right. It's guys from that market, guys are familiar.
What if it's somebody that played in multiple markets?
Well, like Vinatieri, Ron Borges and I have sort of split that up. He did more last year. I did more this year. And then we sort of supplement the guy. But Marshall Faulk was St. Louis and some Colts. But, yeah, it's just somebody familiar with the guy. And, we're not making stuff up. It's the guy's career. I'm just trying to give it context with what their career is, how it compared to other guys in his time and over the course of history. But we get about 5 minutes to state our case, and then there's open dialogue for however long. Sometimes the dialogue is long. Sometimes it's very short. If you've got a guy that everybody sort of agrees that, Peyton Manning, I stood up and said Peyton Manning and sat down.
Right.
I'm not going to waste people's time. Most guys aren't that cut and dried. So, but it's a thorough process. It's a flawed process. I don't like the fact that we've made it harder to get guys in. I just don't believe, and whether this was Deion Sanders complaining that too many guys were getting in that didn't belong. That's easy to say once you're in, by the way. So and whether they change it again, I don't know. A lot of us don't agree with it, but this is our system. And if I dislike it that much, then I'll resign. And I don't want to do that. But we've talked about this every year. Let's say 5 guys get in. Your favorite guy doesn't get in. You say, well, I can't believe my guy didn't get in. Well, I say, well, who do you want to leave off?
Right.
Well, I don't want to leave anybody off. No. That's not the way it works. You get 5. And now you may get 3. They're hard choices.
Chap, appreciate the time and the insight as always. Certainly stay warm. We'll probably talk to you around the Super Bowl as well. Appreciate it, though.
Be well, guys.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us, CBS 4, WXAN, Fox 59. Matt Verderam had a little bit more on this as it relates to a Colts angle to it. We will talk to him from SI, and we'll do it next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Iced tea and vodka, a little splash of vodka in there, and lemonade in vodka. The lemonade is just spectacular. And it is so smooth because there's no carbonation to it. And you just get that little touch of the vodka. The flavors are outstanding. Multiple flavors in both the lemonade and the tea. And new flavors always coming out from Surfside where you can get any of your favorite adult beverages. That's where you buy it, anywhere you buy your favorite adult beverages. Surfside, just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, and it is oh so smooth. The perfect companion for example, your Super Bowl party. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages. Please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Matt Verderam is with SI, friend of the show. Matter of fact, before we know it, he will be here because the NFL Combine will be here. Super Bowl is here. He also was in the news last night, was Matt, because he had the story that he had talked to Bill Polian, and Polian had said that, in fact, he had voted for Bill Belichick, and then later you saw ESPN refuting that, saying that Belichick had said, or that Polian, had said, well, I don't remember whether I did or not. That comes off probably worse than it is. But Matt joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Freezing, but other than that, okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember. You're in Chicago or New York? You're in Chicago, right?
I'm from New York, but I live outside Chicago. Yeah, it's cold as hell.
I was going to say, it's same as you. All right, let's begin with this. The conversation you had with Bill Polian, just what all was drawn out of that, or how succinct was it, or was that part of a broader conversation you had about things?
No, it was, Scott, it was like 90 seconds. I mean, hell, I have the whole thing recorded on my computer. I think it's a 91-second file. It was literally – so I've known Bill for a few years because I've done some historical projects with Sports Illustrated, and we've put together a blue ribbon panel. And I think he's been on all three. He's at least been on two of them. So I've gotten to know Bill, gotten along with him. And so there was a story after it got leaked that Belichick wasn't in the Hall of Fame. ESPN's Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta put out a co-byline piece where in the story they wrote that they talked to some people, or I can't remember if it was one voter or multiple voters, who said essentially that Polian had kind of muddied the water, felt like Belichick should pay penance for the Spygate stuff, the Flakegate stuff. So I just kind of on a whim called Bill and just figured, I don't know if he's going to answer or not. He's 83, but it's worth giving him a call. And he answered, and I just said, hey, you seen the story that Belichick's not getting in? Said he'd only seen the headline of it. And I just said, look, there's a report out there that you had some influence on the idea that he should have to wait a year. And I don't have the exact quote in front of me. It's on my Twitter feed. But basically, it's categorically false. I voted for him. And I asked him if I could put it on the record. He said yes. And he added afterwards just that, it's basically it's not you're not supposed to put out who you voted for, but he's not going to be slandered. And so I could put it on the record. And so I just tweeted it out.
Now I should have asked Chap this. We just had Mike Chappell on. Do you know when that vote took place, Matt? Roughly.
I believe it was last week. I'm not 100% sure. I believe it was last week that vote took place.
Okay. The reason I say it, are you a voter in any Hall of Fame panels at all, Matt?
I am not, no.
Okay. And that made it sound like I was cross-examining you. I didn't mean it that way. So I vote. There's one thing, it's auto racing that I'm a voter for, and I mentioned this earlier only because that's fairly irrelevant, but it's somewhat applicable here. There have been people that, and this wouldn't be the case with Belichick because it's obviously his first time on, but there have been people that I have voted for that did not get in a cycle, and then the next year they're back on the ballot again, and I think this is just me, but I'm thinking, well, if I voted for them last year, then I pretty much have to vote for them this year because it's not like something happened that demerited them, right? And so it becomes confusing to remember who I did and didn't vote for. Thus, I have to keep a log for myself. So,
well, and that's, I think, part of it. So, look, Bill is 83 years old. And, when he talked to ESPN after he spoke with me, his quote to them was that he's 95% sure he voted for Belichick. Now, when he talked to me, he just flat said, I voted for him. I'm like, okay, so, is that kind of couching it? Is that Bill maybe after we got off the phone thinking about it and saying, well, do I have a record of it? Am I 1,000% sure? I don't know. Look, the bottom line, though, is this. Bill Polian, in my opinion, is being made out to be a big scapegoat here because let's even live in a world where Bill misremembered. Let's even live in that world from, okay, you didn't vote for him. There's still 10 other people who didn't vote for him.
Right.
And, this idea that, will Bill Polian turn people against Bill Belichick? You're a grown man or woman. Vote for whoever you think you should vote for. If I was on that panel and Bill Polian came up to me and said, don't vote for him, I would have still voted for him. It wouldn't have mattered. It's a private vote. It's a personal vote. And here's the other side of this. I don't think everybody understands this. So the coaches, contributors, and senior players, they are all in one group. It used to be separate. It was made into one group 2 years ago. There were 5 candidates in that group this year. L.C. Greenwood of the Steelers, Ken Anderson of the Bengals, Roger Craig, most notably of the 49ers, Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick. Those 50 voters were tasked with voting for 3 of those people each. And 1 to 3 of them were to get in based on either if you got more than or 40 or more votes, or if nobody got 40 votes, then whoever the highest vote getter was. So there were at least 11 people who just flat out didn't vote in any capacity for Belichick, who did not make their top 3.
You think it's possible that people just naturally said, Matt, hey, I've got to vote for 3 of these 5 people, and the 2 that did not play the game or that are not there for playing the game were attached at the hip for a very long time within the same organization. So I'm going to pick 2 of the players and 1 of these 2 guys. And just
I think that is possible. I think a few things happened. I spent a lot of time. Bill Pauling was not the only voter I spoke with last night. I probably spoke with 20% of the panel last night, and whether it was over the phone or in the text. And so what I gathered from it was, I think some people felt like other voters, because everyone I talked to, for the record, all said that they voted for him. So take that for what it's worth. Now maybe 1 or 2 of them didn't want to admit they didn't, whatever. But the thought was essentially, when they grouped the senior players in with the coaches and contributors a couple of years ago, that changed the dynamic, because there are some voters who flat out feel like if it's up to a player or a coach or a contributor, I'm voting for the player, because the players are the men on the field.
Right.
I'm voting for those guys over everybody else. And, Belichick and Kraft, they're going to have more bites at the apple here. They just are. But when you talk about an L.C. Greenwood, he may never be on the ballot again. Like, this might be it. So there's a pressure with some of those players to vote for those guys, because this might be their one-and-done shot.
Yeah, that's a very fair way of looking at it, yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that people are just dumping all over these voters like they're morons. And that's not the case. I think there's a reality that some of these guys are going, well, if I don't vote for Ken Anderson this year, he's done. Like, he's not getting in. And so there's that. And then there's the other side. I think some people do hold Spygate against him. And I even think a few people probably figured, look, he's going to get in. I'm going to use my vote on somebody else. And when you combine all those things, I think you had that, you-know-what moment of he didn't get in. Yeah, he didn't get in. He didn't get enough votes.
Matt Verderam is our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. All right, Matt, real quick, the Colts. We've talked to you about them before. I would imagine that as a national writer for SI covering the NFL, Colts have not been on your radar probably for at least the last 2 months or after their hot start and then the Daniel Jones injury. When you look at Seattle and getting Sam Darnold but having pieces around, and Darnold's played well, and now here they are, right? And you look at New England, new coach, but they went out and they got a solid young quarterback and built, and they had pieces. How far away do you believe Indianapolis is?
I think it depends on your feelings about Daniel Jones. Look, I think the roster and the coaching staff, I think are pretty good. I know, Sauce Gardner, I would expect, as long as he's healthy, to be much better next year. A full year in the system. I like their free agent additions for the most part last year. Thought defensively they played a lot better. I still think, they could maybe use a little bit more in the pass rush department. And who knows? Maybe Trey Hendrickson's a guy who was with Anarumo forever. Maybe he's one of those guys. We'll see. Latu is certainly a player, and Buckner's great inside. But I think to get to the Super Bowl, if Jones is Darnold, if he could be Darnold, then yeah, I think then they're at worst a playoff team and they're interesting. But I think if Jones is just a guy, if he's the 18th best quarterback in the NFL, then I think they're far away, because if you don't have a great quarterback, it's just so tough. And Darnold this year, I think, has been good. That team around him is just, they're loaded. And it's been a bizarre year. Like most years, I like Seattle a lot. I don't think Seattle would be winning the Super Bowl most years, but it's just been a season where outside of the Seahawks and the Rams, is anyone even good? I don't think maybe there's one other team, but it's not been a very strong year, and it's just kind of lined up. Everything's worked out perfectly.
If the winner of the Super Bowl, if there was an ad campaign that said, whichever team wins the Super Bowl, everybody in the United States is going to enjoy the cuisine of their city, the Super Bowl winning city that they're most known for, is everybody after the Super Bowl going to be eating clam chowder or drinking coffee?
I'd be shocked if they're not drinking coffee. I think New England's had a great year. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the schedule and everything else. I get it, but you play who's in front of you. That being said, and this is going to sound really disrespectful to New England. I don't mean it to. I was thinking about it the other day. Like, if you look at all the past Super Bowls, how many teams would you take New England to beat of any of the Super Bowl participants in the last 25 years? Maybe like the 03 Panthers, the Giants in 2000. Like, it's not many, right? The 94 Chargers, that team was ridiculous. But, like, I mean, how many – it's not a lot. Like, I think the Patriots are a team that, to their credit, they've taken advantage of the situation. I really like May and Vrabel. But that team's a team normally that's out in, like, the divisional round. And yet here they are. So I would – if Seattle just plays reasonably well, they should win this game.
Is Mendoza going number one overall?
I think so. I never want to commit until after I've been in Indianapolis because everything can change there with medicals and interviews and measurements and all these other things. But as we sit here today, if I were a betting man, yeah, I think he is. There's no other quarterback that's going anywhere close to one. And if you're the Raiders, you kind of have to take him, don't you? I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to sit there and say, no, we're going to take Caleb Downs because we think he's the best player in the draft? Like, I mean, that's great. You're going 3-14. You need a quarterback. Right. So I think Mendoza is just kind of almost by he has to. And look, he's a terrific prospect. There's no reason he can't. But yes, I would at this point I'd be surprised if he was number one.
I was on Washington Street yesterday. I went in, popped in. I'm assuming you're coming for the Combine because they had a little placard with your name on the table at the Taco Bell Cantina, reserved just for you.
Well, honestly, after all the money I spent there the last 2 years, they should.
So you are coming for the Combine?
Oh yeah, of course, yes.
All right, we're
my favorite trip of all year.
We're gonna wrap you up and sit you down at the table for at least a segment when it takes place. All right.
You got it. You name the time. I'll be there.
All right, appreciate it. Matt Verderam joining us from enjoy the Super Bowl, Matt, from Chicago, but of course with SI and good stuff there in regards to Polian. All right, Derek Schultz is up next. We already did a crossover, but we'll do it again, find out what he's got locked and loaded for the program. J&B out, Derek in for him just for the day at 3 o'clock. We'll do it all next. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. 18 Central Indiana area locations, 21 of them statewide. And Chicago's Pizza, think about the family meal deal. You know, you got the Super Bowl coming up, or why not do it tonight? Because you don't want to go out and drive around in this. You can get a Chicago's Pizza and sit $25 family meal deal for 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas and a fresh order of breadsticks that are made right there fresh every single day. You've heard me talk about Chicago's Pizza. I love their commitment to community, the family-type atmosphere of Chicago's, and their commitment towards making the very best in pizza. And don't forget the salad bar is part of the lunch buffet. You get that with pizza and breadsticks, dessert pizza, all for just $13 from 11 until 1:30. Chicago's Pizza, 18 locations in the area. Find one near you at chicagospizza.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
When you do this. Yeah, you do.
Should I get back on the camera?
No. The camera oscillates around.
All you have to do is go like this, and then it goes over to you, right?
I don't know.
No,
the camera does not oscillate.
Is that mic even on?
So
do you want me to? Do I need to hop on here, or what's the
no?
protocol
Over there's fine. That's good.
Sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
the camera will see you.
I'm not on camera though.
I don't know. He started playing Hanson, and you went.
I'm supposed to be on camera when I'm in here. So
There's.
Is this the crossover? Are we crossing over?
Well, I intentionally went long with Verderam so I could have a limited time with you.
This is pretty close.
Yeah,
we're pretty close.
You
right
think
now,
you can probably smell my cologne? Okay, okay, that was uncomfortable. What's lined up for the big show here?
We're excited about it. KB's going to join.
Who's we?
Me and my dog. Kevin Bowe's going to join 4:00. We'll talk about his little. Isn't it cute that him and Rake do that little trip up to South Bend every year? I just think it's fun. Just two guys being dudes, right? Hop in the car together, see some basketball. We'll talk IU, Purdue, Colts, all that stuff with Kevin. Galen Clavio, I'm excited about too. Crimson Cast. Tie a bow on IU's football season. Talk about their big win over Purdue last night, and then Patrick Talty, president of Indiana Sports Corps, is going to join us about courting the NFL draft at the Combine, and they got the men's basketball Final Fours in town. I mean, they always got stuff cooking at Sports Corps, man. Always.
All right, Derek's up next. By the way, Eddie, just so you know, Heather and Connie, that puts us up to 38. 2 female listeners chiming in the last 20 minutes. Heather and Connie, I believe, putting us now to 38. So thank you again to Matt Verderam. Thanks to Mike Chappell. Thanks to Jeff Rabjohns. Thanks to all of you for listening, and we will be back with you at noon tomorrow. As always, I thank you for listening to Query and Company.